populace. And I would say, well, first of all, that's actually very unlikely because that's a difficult thing to manage. And there's no real evidence that centralized governments have done a credible job of that in the last 150 years. And there's plenty of counter evidence. The more widespread that attempt, the more likely it is to end cataclysmically. But then there's another thing to consider too for everyone who's watching and listening is that, a lot of what gives your life meaning at the individual level and the family level and the local community level, the town level, the state level, all of that is the adoption of responsibility that's requisite for your level in the hierarchy. And you might say, well, what the president does with his time is much more important than what the local plumber does with his time. But I'm not so sure that's true at all. Each individual has their bailiwick of divine responsibility. And so does each couple, and so does each family, and so does each community, all the way up that hierarchy of responsibility. And if we devolve power and responsibility up to the highest echelons of government, we denude our own lives of psychological significance and meaning. And that's all found through the adoption of responsibility. We also run afoul of the distributed intelligence that all sorts of local decision makers allow for, right? Because you should be dealing with those things that are right in front of you because you're the only person that can see them. And if you cede that power to abstract authorities, they blunder around stupidly like blind giants. And so one of the things that conservatives can consider, I've had a lot of success with this on the lecture front, is that I've made the case continually in my talks around the world, that's about 400 of them now, that the sustaining meaning in people's lives is developed as a consequence of the adoption of maximal personal responsibility. So there's a direct relationship between responsibility and sustaining meaning. And then if you cede that to authorities above you in the hopes that they'll deliver you from the hands of your enemies, genuine and metaphysical, then you actually exhaust the possibilities of your life. And you leave yourself with something like a sterile shell. And conservatives could do a lot better job on that front of communicating that to young people. It's like, don't look to the government to save you, partly because you should be saving yourselves, right? You should be putting in the effort as an individual, as the member of a couple, as the member of a family, to setting your own house in order. And if you allow others to intercede on your behalf, you put yourself in a state of abject childhood dependence and slavery. And you develop tyrants around you too. It's a really bad solution.
Yes, absolutely. My friend Arthur Brooks has written a lot on this topic, on the topic of finding joy, including happiness as it relates to one's profession, one's work in life. And he said that